Hashtag single dad denied a room in his own hotel. Staff fired on the spot. The little girl stood in the hotel lobby with her tiny backpack clutched against her chest while her exhausted father was told he wasn't welcome in the building he had spent 20 years building. Guests watched in stunned silence as a young front desk supervisor pointed toward the exit, convinced the tired man in faded jeans was just another desperate stranger trying to scam a free room. The father lowered his eyes, wrapped one protective arm around his daughter, and quietly accepted the humiliation. No one in that magnificent hotel realized they had just thrown out the owner. Before we continue, if you believe kindness costs nothing, if you believe people deserve respect before judgment, and if you believe in hope, forgiveness, and second chances, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our growing community that believes compassion can change lives. Graham Mercer had never looked like a millionaire. After losing his wife, Claire, to a sudden illness 4 years earlier, expensive suits stopped mattering. Fancy watches stayed locked inside drawers. Every morning became about making breakfast for his 8-year-old daughter, Nora, braiding her hair even though he never mastered it perfectly, helping with homework, and trying to be both father and mother at the same time. Running the Mercer Grand Hotel had once been his greatest achievement, but raising Nora after unbearable loss became his greatest purpose. The Mercer Grand had earned national recognition for exceptional customer service, luxurious rooms, and elegant architecture. Travel magazines praised it every year, but very few employees had ever actually met the owner. Graham believed the hotel should succeed because of the people who worked there, not because the owner constantly reminded everyone whose name appeared above the entrance. He preferred visiting anonymously several times a year to understand how guests were truly treated. That particular morning had already tested his patience before he even reached the hotel. Nora's school science fair had ended early after unexpected plumbing repairs forced the building to close. Graham had promised they would spend the afternoon together. Since he also needed to inspect several renovation projects at the hotel, he decided to bring Nora along and make it a father-daughter adventure. Unfortunately, a construction accident on a nearby highway trapped traffic for hours. Graham left his luxury sedan with his driver and walked several miles carrying Nora whenever she became tired. Dust covered his clothes. His shoes were stained with mud from crossing a park to avoid blocked streets. Nora's bright yellow sweater was wrinkled, and both of them looked more like weary travelers than respected guests. By the time they reached the Mercer Grand shortly after lunchtime, the lobby sparkled beneath crystal chandeliers while polished marble reflected streams of sunlight pouring through towering windows. Everything looked perfect except for the two exhausted figures standing near the revolving doors. At the reception desk stood Bryce Holden, a recently promoted supervisor determined to prove himself. Bryce believed appearance revealed character. He had convinced himself that protecting the hotel's image required immediate judgment. The moment Graham approached with Nora beside him, Bryce frowned before a single word was spoken. Graham calmly explained that he wanted access to one of the executive suites and requested to speak with the general manager afterward. He carried no wallet because it remained inside the jacket he had left with his driver. His phone battery had died hours earlier. Bryce barely listened. He assumed the man wanted a free room. He assumed the child was part of an emotional story designed to manipulate the staff. He assumed worn clothing meant dishonesty. Several guests nearby began watching as Bryce's voice grew louder. He insisted that only paying guests could enter restricted areas. Graham politely explained there had been a misunderstanding and suggested calling the general manager, but Bryce interrupted him repeatedly. Nora squeezed her father's hand tighter. She had seen adults become impatient before, but never cruel. The little girl quietly whispered that they could simply leave if everyone was angry. Those words pierced Graham's heart more deeply than the public embarrassment. He knelt beside Nora and gently brushed loose strands of hair away from her face. He reminded her that dignity wasn't something another person could take away. People could misunderstand appearances, but kindness remained a choice. An elderly housekeeper named Margaret Ellis had witnessed the entire exchange from across the lobby. She had worked at the Mercer Grand since the hotel first opened. Although she had not seen Graham in nearly 2 years, she immediately recognized him despite the dusty clothes and tired expression. Her cleaning cart stopped moving. Her eyes widened. Without saying a word, she hurried toward the reception desk. Bryce continued insisting that security escort the pair outside before they disturbed other guests. Several employees hesitated, uncomfortable with the situation but unwilling to challenge a supervisor. Then Margaret's trembling voice echoed through the lobby. She quietly addressed Graham as Mr. Mercer. Silence instantly swallowed every conversation. Bryce laughed nervously, convinced the elderly housekeeper had become confused. Margaret repeated herself, this time with complete confidence. She explained that Graham had personally comforted her family years earlier when her husband suffered a stroke. He had secretly continued paying her full salary during months she could not work. He attended her husband's funeral without announcing who he was and arranged a college scholarship for her granddaughter without expecting recognition. The lobby became so quiet that even the fountain seemed louder. Bryce slowly turned toward Graham. The exhausted father simply nodded with humble gratitude toward Margaret. At that exact moment, the general manager, Roland Pierce, exited a nearby conference room after hearing unexpected commotion. The instant his eyes landed on Graham, every trace of color disappeared from his face. Without hesitation, Roland hurried across the marble floor and warmly embraced him. The truth arrived like thunder. Every employee understood. Every guest understood. The man they had dismissed was the owner. Bryce's confidence shattered completely. He began apologizing repeatedly, explaining that he had only been trying to protect the hotel's reputation. Graham listened quietly. He showed neither anger nor satisfaction. He simply looked around the lobby. He noticed frightened employees. Embarrassed guests. A nervous child holding his hand. Then he asked one gentle question. If this could happen to me, how many ordinary people has it happened to before? Nobody answered. Nobody could. The investigation began immediately. Security footage from previous months revealed several disturbing patterns. Bryce had repeatedly denied assistance to elderly travelers who looked poor, treated delivery workers disrespectfully, ignored struggling families while enthusiastically greeting wealthy visitors, and publicly embarrassed guests whose appearance failed to match his expectations. The behavior wasn't an isolated mistake. It had become a habit. That afternoon, Bryce's employment ended. Not because he failed to recognize the owner. Because he repeatedly failed to recognize humanity. Graham personally explained the decision before the management team. He reminded everyone that the Mercer Grand had never been built merely to impress wealthy visitors. It existed to provide hospitality. Hospitality meant welcoming people before judging them. Respect could never depend upon clothing, accent, occupation, or appearance. News of the incident quietly spread among employees over the following days. Many expected Graham to celebrate exposing a disrespectful supervisor. Instead, he organized something entirely different. Every employee, from executives to maintenance workers, attended a new training program centered around empathy, compassion, and unconscious bias. Actors portrayed guests from every walk of life. Staff members learned how quickly assumptions damaged trust. Managers practiced listening before making decisions. Every department discussed how small moments of kindness could become lifelong memories. Graham didn't want fear leading his team. He wanted understanding. Margaret received special recognition during the annual appreciation ceremony, but she requested only one reward. She asked that every new employee hear the story so nobody would ever again mistake appearance for character. Her request became company tradition. Months passed. Customer satisfaction reached record levels. Guest letters increasingly described employees who remembered names, comforted frightened children, helped elderly couples with luggage, and treated every visitor with genuine warmth regardless of appearance. The culture slowly transformed. One bright spring afternoon, Graham returned once again wearing ordinary clothes. No announcement. No security escort. No expensive car. Only Nora walking happily beside him, now carrying a small notebook where she loved sketching hotel gardens and smiling guests. This time something remarkable happened. The newest receptionist greeted them with the same warm smile offered to every visitor. A bell attendant immediately noticed Nora looking tired after the walk and brought her a complimentary bottle of water. Another employee asked whether they needed directions. Nobody cared how they were dressed. Nobody questioned whether they belonged. They simply chose kindness. Graham smiled more proudly than he ever had while accepting business awards. Nora looked up at her father with bright eyes. She quietly admitted she liked the hotel much better now. Not because it was beautiful. Because everyone seemed happy. Graham realized that was the greatest success any business owner could ever achieve. Years later, long after newspapers stopped mentioning the unusual incident, countless employees still repeated the lesson to new hires. Luxury wasn't marble floors. Luxury wasn't crystal chandeliers. Luxury wasn't expensive furniture. True luxury was making every human being feel respected the moment they walked through the door. The Mercer Grand became known not simply as one of the finest hotels in the country but as one of the kindest. Visitors returned because they felt seen. Families celebrated milestones there because they felt welcomed. Employees stayed because they felt valued. And Graham discovered something unexpected. The day he was denied a room in his own hotel became the day his hotel finally became everything he had always dreamed it could be. Before we reach the end, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been judged by your appearance, or have you witnessed someone choosing kindness instead of making assumptions? Leave a meaningful comment below because your story may encourage someone else who needs hope today. As the afternoon sun filled the grand lobby with warm golden light, Graham watched Nora laugh with Margaret while guests from every background walked through the entrance, each welcomed with the same sincere smile. In that simple moment, he understood that buildings create businesses, but compassion creates legacies. His daughter no longer remembered the humiliation first. She remembered the people who chose courage, honesty, and kindness afterward. Sometimes the greatest victories are not about proving who you are but about helping others become who they were always capable of being. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Remember, every person you meet is carrying a story you cannot see, and one act of kindness may become the chapter they never forget.